Wherefore Series 2, Episode 18. It is June. There should be demoiselle flies around the canal with their black wings and shimmering blue bodies. There are hardly any. There should be bee orchids on the commons. So far, Ursula has only seen one. These are really bad omens. Most of the time she just plays with portents for the fun of it, but these signs worry her. The flocks of birds she sees in the air start to look like symbols that surely she should be able to read and yet somehow cannot. She is fractious and uneasy. The landscape feels too small, too close. She needs more trees than this, more sky, more wildness. Sleep is always difficult at this time of year with so little darkness. Ursula wakes before the dawn most days and goes out a lot in the strange grey light at the beginning of the day. Her walks become longer. She has been furloughed. There is nowhere she has to be most of the time. Sometimes she walks as a bear and sometimes as a woman, and sometimes changes her mind halfway. She has by this means lost more clothing of late than she can really speaking afford to lose. The urge to be somewhere else is powerful, but she has no real sense of where she wants to be. Most of the time she doesn't think much about where she is going. Her feet or paws find their own way. She lets cloud formations lead her, follows the early morning calls of owls as they settle for the day, takes directions from passing foxes, as though if only she can find the right sign to guide her, she will discover where it is that she needs to be. The guiding sign when it comes is surprisingly literal. She's in a muddy lane, not all that far from Bull's Cross. There is a big hand-painted sign leaning against a dry stone wall. She knows there has never been such a sign here before, even though it looks old and weathered. The sign says, Ditchley Yat, this way. And there is an arrow pointing to a footpath that wasn't here before either. Ursula eyes the path to Ditchley Yat and considers her options. Most of her heart yearns for adventure. She really wants to go, to see, to know. But being a local bear, she knows the folklore. If she takes the path to Ditchley Yat, there is no saying when or if she would return. She stands in the lane for a long time and thinks about Nerys. Her girlfriend is likely the only living person who would miss her, and the only living person she would miss. For once, Ursula is glad she has kept her clothes on. She pulls out her phone. It takes several goes to write a text. In the end, she settles for saying, Forgive me. I've seen a sign to Ditchley Yat. I have to go. I don't know when I'll be back. I love you. The thing is that Ursula has never said, I love you, out loud to anyone. She has in recent months said a lot of things to Nerys that were supposed to convey the idea that this is love without using those specific words. She knows it is a terrible thing to write this now, when she has decided to go and might not be able to come back. But it would be worse, she thinks, to go having never clearly said it at all. She hopes she will be coming back, and that Nerys will be able to forgive her. The footpath calls, and the attraction is so fierce, so demanding, that she has no means to resist it. Ursula follows the footpath. It is narrow, but seems to be well walked, with luscious wildflowers on each side of the bare strip of earth. This is the sort of path that is kept open by the passing of many feet. The ground is hard, and there are no informative footprints. Not that Ursula has any great skill at reading footprints, but she likes to try. She takes special delight in finding her own bear prints when out and about. The path takes her through the narrow neck of a valley. The landscape around Stroud is full of surprise valleys, and you never know when you might find a new one. Even so, this is clearly not one of those small surprise valleys hidden by a fold in the hills. This valley is large, easily as big as Painswick. It's not the sort of valley a person might accidentally not notice. All of the hairs on Ursula's arms rise gently as she thinks about this. A valley of this size could only be hidden deliberately. Now she can see it unfolding. There are field strips on either side of the path, and unless she is very much mistaken, much of what is growing out there is turnips. This really could be Ditchley Yat. It could be real. It smells real in an earth fertilised with rotten manure kind of way. It looks real. A few paces ahead of her, a shrew breaks from the undergrowth and scurries out onto the path. It stops halfway and turns to look at her before continuing on its journey. The shrew is entirely silent, but even his presence is weighty with meaning. Ursula thinks about the miracle of the shrews and knows that this is a sign that she has truly crossed the border and entered the valley of Ditchley Yat. She may even be in the parish of Ditchlouse. Ursula checks her phone and finds that she has no signal. This is unsurprising. She looks back the way that she has come. The path is still there, still looks real and reliable. She turns her back once more on all that is familiar and keeps going. Now she can see people out in the fields hoeing amongst the turnips. She has to tuck in against the hedge as a boy comes past her with a pig on a lead. He glances at her, but says nothing. The pig also says nothing. A cluster of houses come into view. It looks a lot like any other Cotswold village, only there are no cars, no aerials on the roofs, and there's no tarmac. It's like being in some kind of fantasy Gloucestershire, some nostalgic cider with rosy light rise to Candleford film set, in which the harsh realities of rural life have been left out. There isn't likely to be a poorhouse here, she thinks. Ursula is wrong in many of her initial assessments. The ditches of Ditchley Yat are anything but picturesque. The lice of Ditchlouse are very real. The place is at least as much in keeping with the Wicker Man as it is with anything Laurie Lee might have written. Even the most gothic and uncanny of settings can look delightful in the bright light of a June morning. Even the most sinister of people can seem charming when they're hoeing turnips. Ursula has no way to confidently interpret what she is seeing. A small urchin skips past her. Actual barefoot urchin. Actual skipping. From outside one of the preposterously quaint cottages, a man gives her a wave. "Come about the job, have you?" His accent is thick and reminds Ursula of her grandmother. "Job?" she says, with no idea what he's talking about. The man smiles at her in a friendly way. "We've been advertising for ages, but these things take time. Glad you're here now, though. Lovely weather for it." Ursula realises that people are heading towards them from all directions. They are all smiling. They all seem pleased as they gather around. Social distancing is clearly not a thing here. Ursula is unsettled and feels very alone in this crowd, and a long way out of her depth. "I think we should just crack on and initiate you," says the man. "Anyone got a sack? Or a bucket?"